Hi everyone, Titus here for another Unreal Engine tutorial, and in this video we'll create an elevator prototype to carry our player between locations. This will be a beginner-friendly tutorial and a great intro to game dev, as lifts and elevators are quite common across games of all genres. Let's not waste any time and just jump right into it. Alright, so I did a little pre-setup to keep the video lean. We have, looks like 4 sections with some elevator cutouts, and we're using the third-person template. So we'll write the blueprint for the elevator, and then I'll show you how well it scales across this level. So let's open up our content drawer, and we can right click, create a new blueprint class. We'll use type actor, and then we'll just call it BP_elevator. We can then double click and dock this in our main window. And I went ahead and modeled a elevator in Blender. So I'm just going to go ahead and select my elevator and my elevator doors, and then I can hit the add under components and then select the static meshes to add all 3. You can use any elevator you want from, like, maybe you can download it from Fab or from the web, or you can create your own. I'll maybe leave a link for this project so you can steal this elevator if you want to use it in your projects as well, if I remember to do that. But starting off, I need the doors opened. So the right door, I'm going to move it along the x-axis by 100 units, and then the left door, I will do negative 100 units. And then I also need a light because it's kind of dark, so I will hit the add button, and then if I search for rect light, I think that works pretty good. I just want to bump it up and press E because we need to rotate it 90 degrees, press W, and then I can drag that right there maybe. Alright, that way it's lit up a little bit and it looks a little bit nicer. So starting off, we need to create some variables. So on the left hand side, we can hit the plus sign next to the variables option here. The first variable we'll add is called control points. This is going to be a list of all our, basically all our locations in the world. So this is going to be of type vector. And then we want to make sure we hit the little eyeball to make this publicly exposed so we can edit it in the editor. This also allows us to check the box for show 3D widget. That's going to be super important because it is much easier to drag a little widget around rather than hard typing in X, Y, and Z locations. So we'll just go ahead and compile and kind of set that up there. And we'll head to our construction script to write our first bit of code. So we'll pull off here into a for each loop. The for each loop expects an array. So the control point currently is a single value. If we go over here and set this to array, we can then just drag and drop this into the array option, just like that. We'll pull off the loop body. The node we're going to use is add static mesh component. We're going to right click on the transform and split it. That gives us access to the location. We can pass the control points location right into here, and then we can pull off the return value into the set static mesh node. So this basically says for each location in our control point, we're going to create a static mesh, and then we're going to assign it this actual static mesh. So I'm going to right click and just promote this to a variable, and we'll call this as our ghost mesh. I'm also going to click the eyeball to make this publicly exposed so I can edit it in the actual editor. When I select the ghost mesh, I'm going to, of course, just use my little elevator. You can, of course, use whatever static mesh you're going to be using for this project. After that, I'm going to pull off the return value into a set material node. And we're going to create the material that we're going to be using for this in just a second. So basically what this is doing is this is going to spawn or instantiate a static mesh along each of these control points, however many you decide to set up. The problem with that, though, is if you spawn a bunch of static meshes, they're going to block you and your elevator at the bottom from going up. It's going to kick you off. So you want to select this node here, and on the right hand side under collision you want to set it to be no collision. because we're basically not going to be, we don't want this to be colliding. This is just to help us actually set the locations the elevator is going to be moving to, basically. So we can compile that. Now we need to create the material, so let's head back into our main scene. We'll open up our content drawer, and let's just simply right click, create material. We'll call this m_holographic, and then we'll double click to open this up. Now this is an opaque material by default. On the left hand side we can set the blend mode from opaque to be translucent, because I think that'll work and look a little bit better. Then hold 3 on your keyboard, click into the graph to add a constant 3. We can plug this into the base color, and then pick any color you want. I'm just going to go with a pink for now. And then we want to use a Fresnel. So if you just search Fresnel, this one right here, we can then pull off into a multiply node, and then the other B pin will actually be going into a sine remapped. Sine goes from -1 to 1. Sine remap goes from 0 to 1. So that's going to be a little bit better for this use case. Now I can pull off the sine phase into a time node, and you can kind of preview if I hook this up to opacity. You can kind of see what it's doing a little bit. Now for value 1, if we hold 1, click in the graph, that'll give us a constant 1. And then we can set this to be higher value, like maybe 5. And you see you get a nice, kind of good pulse here where you can kind of like look to see where a preview of your elevator is going to be, which is kind of what we're going to be using for this. If the pulse is going too quickly, you can of course divide time by a value, and that'll actually slow the pulse down, but I'm going to leave it as this because I think it's good enough. And then if we go back to our elevator under the set material, we never set the material, so we'll just go ahead and search for our holographic, compile and save, and then we can kind of test this out and just see how it's looking. So let's maybe go over here, we can drag our blueprint in. I'm going to press E to bring in the rotation, and then just drag it 90 degrees, and then press W. If you hold Control, you can right click or left click to move it back and, left and right, up or down. And if you hold both the left and right mouse at the same time, you can bring it up and down. And if you press the N key, it'll drop it down to the ground. So I'm just going to try to move it in position as best I can. Doesn't really need to be perfect. And I think that is probably good enough for what I'm going for here. But the beauty of this is you'll look in the details panel and you can see the control points are showing here. There's 0 elements in the array, so if I just add a single element, you see it spawns a control point. You can't really see it. If I just bump this up a little bit, you can kind of see where it kind of where this is a little bit easier to work with, because I can grab this little control point and then I can move and see exactly where the elevator is going to go to, so I can set the exact location. And that's a little bit better because you can see what it's doing in the inspector here, where it's basically setting the value rather than writing out a value and then looking to see where it is. This is just kind of like faster to work with, I think. And then of course I can hold Control and then use my left and right mouse key to fine tune this and kind of just lock it in where I need the location to be. So maybe I think right there looks pretty good. And then I need another control point, so I'll hit the plus sign and that'll spawn the control point back at the ground. And you can of course add as many as you want. I'm just going to use 2 for now just to kind of make this example simple. Feeling this video is already going to be a little bit long. But we got the control points set up. Let's go back into the blueprint. And this time we're going to go to our event graph. And we can delete all these nodes because I don't think we're going to be using them. There's a few ways you can do your elevator logic. You can of course use buttons. So like when the player goes to a button, you can maybe set up a widget. Widget shows up on your viewport, and then you can have it click the up button or the down button. Elevator goes up or down. Another way you can do it too is just using like colliders, like box colliders or sphere colliders. When the player overlaps or interacts with the collider, then the elevator starts its logic and actually moves that way. A lot of like Dark Souls games are like this, where they have like a little pressure switch where they step on, switch goes down, and then the elevator goes up or down based on that. So we'll do the collision event because I think that's easier. So in our components tree, we need to add some type of collider. You can do box, sphere, capsule, doesn't really matter. I'll use a box collision for this example. In the details panel under box extent, I'm going to set that to be 100 cubed. And then I'll just maybe bump this up in position like so. And that looks pretty good like that. So basically anything that overlaps or interacts with this little box is going to fire off an event. So if I select my box collider and I right click, I have this event option, so I can expand that out. And then I have these collision events. So I have begin overlap, end overlap, and I have hit, sleep, and wake. So I'm going to use begin overlap for this example. And I only want to do this logic when the player overlaps. You can see that it's going to detect a lot of things. It'll detect the doors, it'll detect the elevator, anything else in the level that you have going on, it'll hit. So I only want it to do the logic when the player walks into it. And for this prototype, we are using the BP third person character, so I can use that as a reference. So we pull into a cast node, and I'll just cast to the third person character, and then I'll pass the other actor as the object. And then if it's successful, do this. If it fails, do this. So if it's true, I'll maybe do a print string, and then I'll tell it to say all aboard. And then I can go into a flip-flop node. And a flip-flop basically does A first, then it does B, and then it does A, and then it does B. Basically, basically as this keeps happening, it just kind of switches between them. So we'll create two custom events. We'll do one called move up, and the other custom event will be move down. So under the A channel, we can call move up. Under the B channel, we can call move down. Pretty simple and straightforward. So let's go ahead and move these nodes down here. Let's compile and save, and let's actually see what this looks like so far. So if I walk in the elevator, nothing's going to happen, but in the top left corner of my screen, you should see all aboard. So we know it's actually triggering, it's getting a true value, so it is actually seeing the actual player character. So we can make this work. Let's go back to the blueprint. We'll work on the move up logic first. I think I'm going to use a timeline, just because those are pretty easy. We'll call this door close. I need to do two things when the player enters. I need to close the doors, and then I need to move I need to manipulate the doors, and then I need to move the elevator. So, doors close, elevator goes up or down, and then I need the doors to open. So it's basically what we're going to be working with here. I want this to play from start, so I'll do that. And then I have the left door here, and I have the right door here. If you remember from our viewport, I was only manipulating the X value. So I moved the X value to positive 100 for the right door, and negative 100 for the left door. So we can just pull off these nodes and do set relative location. I can right click and split the structure pin because I only need to modify the X value. The other ones kind of don't matter. I can press Control D, duplicate that node, plug in my target here, hook these up like so, plug this in the update pin, and then I just need to update these X values. So using the timeline. So if you double click the timeline, it opens up the editor here. I want this to happen, let's say 3 seconds, I think is a good timeline. We'll add a single track, we'll do a float, and we'll just call it doors. this is going to be the doors closing. So the starting position needs to match the doors how they are now. So you can see that it's basically the X value is negative 100 for this one and 100 for this one. So for the left door, I can just add at time 0. I'll set this to be negative 100. And at the end of the timeline, or 3 seconds, I will set it to be 0. And then I can frame this, and that's my basic timeline. Now I don't want this to be linear. I kind of want it to kind of be interpolated, gradual. So I can right click and set this to auto, and then right click here, set to auto. And then I can just move these handles and just get a nice gradual curve. And I think that'll look a little bit smoother, so the doors will start slow to close and open, and then they'll speed up until they get to the end. Now you could create another timeline for the right door, but if you wanted to be lazy, because this is the left door, remember the right door was positive 100, I can actually just come into a multiply node and just multiply it by negative 1. That'll flip it, and then I just plug this in here. So you can create 2 float tracks and do it that way if you want, or you can just be lazy and just multiply it by 1, whatever works. We can see how this works. So let's just compile, save, and the flip-flop should still be calling this. So if I come in here, you should see the doors actually close, and that looks like it works good. So now we need to set the logic to actually move the elevator. So on the timeline, there's a finished pin. So we can pull off this finished, and there's a bunch of different ways you can move your elevators. You can use level sequencers. You can, of course, move them through timelines themselves. You can use interp 2. In this case, I'm going to use the move component function, move component 2. And I think this will work just fine. It has an ease in and ease out, so I'm going to check both of those. And then I can set the timeline. But what I'll do is I'll promote that to a variable, and I'll call it travel time. I will set it to be public so we can edit it while we're messing with the level. And then I'm going to use a default value, maybe 5 seconds starting off, I think is good. And we'll bring this down here. But we need to figure out the target location. So where do I want to move the elevator to? Well, that's why we're doing the control points. So I can just pull the control points in, do a get, and then I can pull off that into a get a copy. And I need to get the first element in the array. So the way I did my level is this control point is the first control point I did. The second control point here is the one down here. So that's control point 1. That's array element 0. Array element 1. So if we go back here, I'm just going to tell it to get the array element 0, plug that in there, and then basically this should move the elevator. But we haven't actually targeted a component. So I can only do one component, so there's going to be an issue with this. So if I move the elevator over here, we compile and save and play this. The doors will close, and then everything's going to go wrong. Oh, you can see I lost my doors and I lost my light. That's not what we want. So the way to basically fix this is it moves the component. So if we make this the parent component, all the children will follow it. So we can just drag this on top of there. We can move the rect light, and we can move the trigger box. So now these are all kind of grouped together. So now they should follow the parent. The children will follow the parent, basically. So now if I go in here, doors close, elevator starts to move up, but the elevator's not going to open, right? We haven't set the logic for that, so I'm basically kind of trapped here. So I can't do anything. So we basically need to set up another timeline. So under the completed pin, we can do timeline, Yeah, we just call it door open, play from start. And then what we can do is we can select these nodes, Control D to duplicate. We'll hook up the update pin into here. And then we just need to set up the actual like timeline for it. So if we double click, we're going to use a 3-second timeline. We'll add a single float track, call it doors. This time we're starting from a closed position, so our first frame will be 0, 0, and then our second keyframe will be at the end, or 3, and then we'll do -100 because that's the left door. And then we want to make this to be a smooth opening, so we'll set this to be auto, auto, and then I'm just going to grab this handle and just kind of, just so it's gradual, and I think that'll work. Alright, and that gives me a little float track, so I can hook this into here, and I can plug this into the multiply pin, and then that should hopefully get my doors open so I can basically get out of the elevator. Alright, so what we'll do is we'll go in, says all aboard, doors close, elevator goes up, that works pretty good. Doors open, I'm able to get out. The problem is though, I can't go down. If I go in, you'll notice it doesn't really do anything. So it does the all aboard, and then it closes the elevator doors. I think it'll wait the 5 seconds for the timeline, and then the doors are just going to open again. So we got to set up the logic for when we did the flip-flop. We got the move up set up, but we got to do the move down. Well, it's easy enough. All we really have to do is we'll bring this down here. We can select all these nodes, press Control D, duplicate them, and then we'll just hook up the play from start. And then the only thing we really need to change is the control point. So we were going to the first control element. This time we need to go to the second, which will be value 1. So I can compile, save that. Then we'll hit play. Run in the elevator. Should have moved the start point a little bit closer. Plays the all aboard. Moves over. Then if I go back in, it says all aboard, closes the doors, and I go down. So now we have a working elevator, just like that. So how well does this actually scale? Well, not too bad, actually. Because we did most of the main logic there, we got these control points. Like if I were to duplicate this, like say I do hold Alt, drag this over, I move that, say, like right there. I can come to my control points and I can just hit the little minus sign, so it kind of resets them. Then I can just add a plus sign to add my first element. And then I can just grab that, and let's say I wanted to come to the 3rd floor. Yeah, we'll call that 3rd floor. Then I can hold control, both mouse wheels. There we go. And I can maybe move that right there. So that gets that elevator set up there. And then I need my second control point to go back down. And then that one's pretty much set up. Then I can select the elevator. I can duplicate it over by holding Alt. And then I can delete these keyframes. Probably didn't have to actually delete them. 500 for that one. Select this, and then let's go to the very top. So move it up there, and I'll maybe bring that down just a smidge. I think that looks pretty good there. and then we needed our final control point for back on the ground. And then if I wanted to make one last elevator, I could duplicate this over. But this time, instead of actually deleting the control points, I could just come over here, grab that duplication, and then maybe move that where I want it to be. Kind of like so. So then if I play the scene, I didn't really, I set up a bunch of elevators, but I didn't have to go in and mess with the logic. I probably shouldn't have used that elevator. We'll do a different one. We know that one works. I'll move into this one. But you'll notice that, it goes where it's actually supposed to, and like the up and down functionality is there and it works. So the scale is pretty good compared to most other things that you use. So I kind of like this this approach to it, especially this works really well with movers as well. If you're, maybe you're not doing elevators, you're just doing platforming or something. I think it's a pretty good system. And we got one last to test, so we'll go back down and we'll just make sure the other one ends up over there. And you can refine this, of course. You can add like maybe a camera where it'll blend the camera to like an elevator camera or something. And take it from the view target. You got a couple different options. And then you can, of course, too, adjust like the travel time. Like maybe you want a slow elevator, so you increase the time, right? So then if I were to pick one here, it'll take 10 seconds going to the next spot. Actually, whoops, that was the wrong one I did. So let's do this one right here, 10 seconds. Because you can set them individually, which is kind of nice. Just from the level editor. So you can have some elevators that are quick, some elevators that are slow. You can have elevators that stop at multiple points. You can set your logic however you want to do it. I think it works pretty good. And the other thing too is if you want to get rid of, like if your project's about done and you want to get rid of these little viewers, you can just, go into the construction script, and under that mesh component, you can maybe do hidden in game, compile, save, and then when you play, you won't actually see those purple outlines of where the elevators are going to be going to. Alright, good people, I think we'll cut the video here to keep it short, but I hope you found some informative value that you can take into your own projects. But as always, thanks for watching, consider subscribing, and we'll see you on the next one.